Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Florida Man Season 1, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I love, the crazy circumstances of events. It's kind of what I talked about last episode with, obviously we get the full context of everything because Mike asked, Deli, what happened to your plan? And she's like, Florida had happened because it's you can plan and have all these machinations, but it doesn't account for Florida. Florida is kind of a beast on its own. Once again, I've never lived in Florida. I've never been to Florida, but obviously it's just that's always the story about Florida. It's Florida's Florida. It's kind of it's a Wild West. It's a beast of its own. So. But I do love that it's just I think the show's just going to be filled with crazy, weird Florida circumstances because we had first and foremost, let's talk about this a little bit of this side plot in this episode. It is tied to all of this is Clark Gregg's character is trying to buy a gun because he's I've been going to every gun show and I can't find anyone selling me a gun because he's I've somehow managed to go to every upstanding gun show where no one's going to sell me a gun and let me walk out here with it, which you're hey, that's a good thing. You should be able to have easy access to get a gun and walk out. That's a good thing. But the fact is, he's you can't go anywhere without tripping over 3 guns. And he's I'm a cop. And then the music just stops. Everyone looks at him and starts packing up their stuff. And this kid sells him a gun. Said gun was used in a robbery / murder, earlier. And this guy had a hand grenade. And then the store owner pulled out a sword. The guy pulled out a gun, shot the store owner, disposed of the gun later on. Kid finds the gun, kind of fishes it up, and he sells it to Clark Gregg's character. He gets pulled over by some cops, and I love that he tried. And it said he was from Durham County, which I'm hey, I wasn't paying attention to his card. I'm is he from North Carolina? Maybe. Durham and everything, so I just assumed so. But I know there are other Durhams in other states and stuff. But either way, I'd assume he's a North Carolina cop, a state trooper, not a state trooper. He said what kind of cop he was. I just wasn't paying as much attention as I should have. But I love that it's he's tried to pass the guy his license, and that he's hey, I know plenty of state troopers. You guys is dangerous. You guys are the real ones. He's I respect you guys so much. And the guy was registration. His wife accidentally opens the little thing in the middle and is oh, there's the gun. Oh, that gun was used in a murder. And he's well, I didn't know that, but he got locked up. I love that he's talking to his wife on the phone. The phone starts acting up. He puts it on speaker. She's yeah, and you're a decorated police officer. Every inmate that was there on the phone turns on, which is the first time I've ever seen that before. Is that new, or is that just maybe only certain prisons have that? That's interesting. The whole instead of the glass and speaker you can talk to each other through the phone, it's it's a wall. I guess they're on the other side of the wall, but who knows how much concrete is in between you and the other person. But making it so that you have to see each other through a screen. I'm I don't watch every TV show, but I've never seen that utilized. I guess only maybe certain prisons have those. I was that's the first time I ever saw that. But I love that every inmate looked at him the moment they heard about him being an officer. It's cool. Next to being kind of a pedophile, being a cop is probably the next worst thing you can be in prison. So that's cool. That's super not good for him. So I'm curious to see where that goes. It's funny. This all happened because Mike took his gun. Why he was so adamant about keeping a gun on him. I wonder if that has to be his official. I wonder is that his own police. It can't be his. It has to be his own gun. Because I was about to say if it was his own police issued gun, it's you definitely that would be an. Because he did have his card in there when Mike saw it. So it's I think he just likes flaunting off the fact that he's a cop. But that has to be his personal sidearm for him to just try and replace it with getting a different gun. Because I was about to say you have to file a whole bunch of paperwork. You have to let it be known that you had your sidearm taken from you. So that would be a whole thing. So I can only assume that has to be his personal one. So flowing back to what I was kind of starting off a little bit at the beginning of the episode is the whole Mike and Deli situation. It's like, cool, I am kind of happy that you're alive. Now I'm going to call Moss and tell him the truth. But he won't do it because he does care about her. He was sad when he thought she died because despite their complicated circumstances, once again, they're two cage birds that kind of found each other in the cage, and now it's like, right, am I really going to throw her back to the wolf that is, Moss? So he tells Moss, she's dead. And even tricks him later on and says, like, right, I will find out who killed her, so I'm using that as an excuse not to go back because Moss wants him to come back. It's like, no, I delivered, like, yeah, you told me to find Deli, she's dead, but yeah, I did this for you, we're square. And he's like, no, a guy, like, I asked to put fish in a koi pond. If he delivers a dead fish, why would I pay him? A very apt analogy, and it's like, yeah. So, but also it fits exactly what Deli said. There's no getting from underneath Moss. I mean, that's like anyone. Like a loan shark is always going to try and like bleed you more and more with like, oh, more interest, and stack things against you. They're not trying to let you win. They're trying to get you deeper in a hole because you're his right-hand guy. You're his go-to guy. So it's like, right, you get me results. So there's no way I'm going to let you go. I also love that his right-hand man is his other right-hand guy is super progressive, because the guy was like, yeah, you got to find the guy who did this. And the guy was like, or her. And Moss is like, what? He's like, well, yeah, I mean, women are in that situation as well. So basically saying the person who killed Deli could just as much be a woman, because we're not being stuck to set, when it comes to killers, they aren't just stuck to gender roles or something like that. I'm like, I love that he's supposed to probably be like, it was a similar bit in Harley Quinn that there's someone known as the woke goon who would kind of do similar things. So I think this character kind of flows in that. I love that type of character type of like, yeah, like you're this mobster and you're part of a gang or a mob and you're the one that's like, oh yeah, very progressive, very quote unquote woke. I love that. I think it's also an interesting piece of information that, at least on screen, at no point did Mike actually tell, well, for one, he hasn't told Deli two pieces of information. One being Gil is dead. So we know, like, okay, so she's known about this gold thing since Moss was beating the crap out of and threatening Gil, because it's like, right, it's like potentially I found the boat that had this approximately like $100 million in gold in it. So she overheard that. So that's why she suggested Florida, because this was going to be her out. She's been planning it since then. So I guess that's why she probably like did what she did at the restaurant, because she was using it as an excuse. But maybe it's just like everything. That's the thing of like knowing how much just happened to fall into place and how much didn't. Because now there's a question of, I asked previously, like, did she know that he was from Florida, or was it just purely coincidence? It's like, now I'm like, it probably was, but the fact is the coincidences just kind of happen and create these interesting circumstances. Because it's like, right, she wanted to go to Florida because she heard about the gold coins. Mike has his own connection to the gold coins because he's from Florida, which we actually got an interesting flashback to like a year prior at the very beginning of last episode when he was at that gamblers meeting. And he had talked about kind of like, and it's kind of underlining issues between him and his dad. It started with him finding that gold coin. This is kind of representative of like, you're destined for so much. And for Mike, he held on to that. He's like, post my mom being gone, I still held on to, I believed. And he's like, and that's what kind of brought up the gambler in him, thinking like, right, I'm gonna have that. He's like, yeah, most people see this as an opportunity of like, hey, I found a gold coin. That's cool. He's like, gamblers, we see this as an opportunity that we immediately pick up like some inspection tools, because we got to search everywhere. So he's like, that's what kind of sparked it in him. Like his dad kind of put that in him at a very young age. And I think maybe a lot of that is why along with just his dad being the criminal that he is, probably makes, Mike so resentful to him on some level. I think that's where a lot of their issues started. Even to the point when they're hanging out later on, he was like, yo, we used to go to get donuts every Sunday. Mike's like, no, we didn't. He's like, yes, we did. We used to do fun things. Because for him, it's like he's tired of Mike trying to make it seem like, oh, I'm the worst father in existence. I was a good father to you. You're letting all your hatred for me about other stuff cloud like, right. Which, yeah, we do have that tendency where it's like, I've done that before, where like I will only look at the negative in a situation and the positive kind of gets like cut out. And then, retrospective kind of even kilters that out a little bit if you're able to kind of move past your anger and stuff. But I don't know if maybe Sonny is completely full of shit and Mike is right that, like, no, we didn't do that. You think we did that, but we never did. Or maybe it's just like I said, Mike is just so angry at his dad that he refuses to look at even the good aspects of his dad, because it's like, right, the good aspects just disappoint me more, because if you are a complete and utter shitty person, that's one thing. But because there are little crumbs of a good person in there, I have always expected more from you. And I've gotten brokenhearted time and time again, especially after his mom died. Because I didn't bring it up last episode, but Mike doesn't like his mom being brought up. Specifically, he doesn't like Sonny bringing her up. So even going as far as I don't even say her name. So her death really was kind of, I think, the straw that broke the camel's back, at least when it came to their relationship. Plus, maybe that gambler in him searching for that next high, that all gamblers are kind of looking for. Like, I think a lot of that plays a conjunction in why their relationship is as screwed up as it is. I think it's also interesting, too, kind of tying this all into a kind of another story beat, is Sonny wants to have a memorial for Deli, which I'm immediately like, it feels like that can be a bad issue. Because we learned a little bit about Deli's dad this episode, like that he's gone. But part of me wonders, like, not unless she's lying about that. Once again, we don't know how long Deli and Moss were dating, so he might not know enough about her family circumstances. Once again, we still also don't know the thread that ended up bringing them together. What did she get from Moss that kind of put her in his debt in a similar yet different way, like Mike, My point is, I just worry and just think that maybe him having such a public thing for Deli will end up creating some issues, that some stuff maybe connected to Deli might come to light, especially because the cops, like Iris in particular, we get introduced to her boss, which was, oh God, I'm blanking on her name. I want to say Batwoman was the most recent thing I saw her as. She was like the girlfriend of the Joker, but I want to say it's Turk's wife. She's the actress, Carla, right? Wasn't that her character's name from Scrubs? That's the thing I best know her from, but like she's like the captain. They are looking into Deli because like she is Moss's alibi for Gil's death, but then if stuff about her murder and her death comes to light, that's going to complicate things, especially because they want to try and take Moss down, but like it's that almost like tax evasion thing of like, we'll take you down for one thing and maybe that'll be enough to kind of dismantle your organization. So that's also another concern about her, like, memorial and what that could end up bringing to light, especially considering Iris is connected to all this because of her connection to Mike, because obviously not only are they still, in contact with each other, they were once married, which has now gotten her kicked off the case. I love that the guy that got her kicked off the case, I love that the captain was like, wow, she's definitely not going to fuck you now. I'm like, oh, I guess there's kind of a thing of he kind of likes her, and I don't know if he's like another cop or whether he's like a prosecutor or something like that. But it's like, yeah, it's a conflict of interest because Mike is a potential suspect, because it's like, hey, Moss would never do this himself. When it comes to Gil's death, he'd most likely, outsource it to his right-hand guy, and that being Mike. So, because Iris is already asking a whole bunch of questions about like, right, do you really know anything about Deli? Which he does, but he claims not to. And is it true that she was with him all night? It's like, yeah, but you can't really admit to your ex, who you do still have a thing for, that like, yeah, I was screwing my mobster boss's girlfriend that night. So, but I mean, he also probably, like, they weren't together the entire night, because he ended up dropping her off later. So, I mean, who knows how long they spent together when he like got her coffee and then like dropped her off home. Like, she probably could have had time to go kill Gil, but but it's also like, yeah, like I'm part of her alibi too, but I don't want that kind of thrown out there and put on a public record type of situation. I think I forgot this thread earlier when I was talking about it, because I am a little all over the place. I apologize. I think I forgot to talk about the other point I was thinking of. Like, I might have brought it up, maybe I didn't. I know I brought up the whole, like, he didn't tell her that Gil is dead, but also like, right, his connection to the gold and stuff. So the reason why he's adamant about like, right, it doesn't exist, because he himself is one of many people who've been chasing it forever, and it's kind of led him nowhere, and it's just a key part of him being the gambler that he is. So he doesn't want Deli like betting it all on this pipe dream that might not come true. They went to Gil's boat, found nothing, but they're like, oh, maybe he had it in like a truck or something. So ultimately they find out, because it's only, once again, just the pieces falling into place, and it almost seems on purpose now when you actually think about it, that obviously to help sell the story about Deli, Mike wants to use Patsy to try and get to the ambulance driver who's still unconscious, because it's like, right, we got to find out what he knows, because we can't take the chance he talks to someone. He likes Deli, so he might not say anything, but, you know, I mean, because he was the victim in this situation, so, but he's also there's Andy knows that he's the one that, well, yeah, that he ended up being the one potentially picking up the body, and he's a loose end in all of this, so that might be an issue when it comes to the Moss thing, because you know at some point, whether it's going to be like the next episode or so, at some point Moss is going to go down to Florida, or at least send one of his men to go down to Florida. I feel like he'll probably try and handle it himself, so he'll probably come down to Florida with a crew, like, and it's going to complicate wherever Mike and Deli are in this like gold hunting adventure of theirs. Like, it's probably going to like really cause some major issues on that front. We also know Deli has some kind of flash drive that she stole from Moss, which he now knows it's gone, and probably like the only other person that would probably have knowledge of that safe would probably be Deli. So he probably has extra motivation of like, I need to go down to Florida if she is dead to see if she's got this flash drive on her body. So he might end up in Florida a lot sooner than I thought. Maybe. We'll see. But we have no idea what's on that flash drive and like why she took it. It might have some connection with Sonny, because I thought that was kind of an interesting development, because I was thinking on some level, it's like, well, we know he's a criminal. It's like, could there be some correlation? But I'm like, no, she didn't know his family was in Florida. But then I'm like, is that something to do with the stolen flash drive? Because I was like, but obviously she stole that before she left. So has her connection with Sonny actually existed prior to this? Or is it only upon finding out that Mike was involved that... Because... Well, because she... Oh, God, it's so confusing, because it's like, well, this show's going to unveil stuff at its own pace and when it decides to, but it's like, well, we know that Mike went to Sonny about finding Deli, so maybe Sonny found Deli before Mike found out she was still alive, and they've been in cahoots ever since. Or maybe it was after Mike and Deli met up again at the end of last episode / the beginning of this episode that they ended up like working together. But now she's kind of manipulating Mike, which is kind of effed up. Like, maybe in some level, like, I mean, it's like we're all going to get what we want. Like, this gold, like, it feels so messed up that it's like, because you can tell she is manipulating him. It's like, oh, once again, using like the Orpheus story of like, yeah, I was confusing that with another story. The story I was kind of confusing with in my head was like the Izanagi and was it Izanagi and was it Izumi? Was it Izanagi's wife? I don't remember. I was confusing it with like some Japanese folklore. The Orpheus story, but it's like, yeah, the whole don't look back, and he did, and she was banished to hell forever. I was like, but wasn't like Izanagi's story kind of like that too? It had something to do with like his wife being in hell. I'm butchering the story so much. I don't really remember it that well. Because it even plays into the title of the episode, Welcome to Hell, Mike. And so it's just like, right, kind of like, there's almost like a siren thing going on with her, and she's kind of manipulating. Maybe she's not just manipulating Mike, maybe she's manipulating Sonny, or maybe Sonny's using them both. There's just a lot of people getting used and manipulated in these circumstances, because Mike does eventually track down and find the truck. It was, impound it, because it was left there so long, because obviously Gil left it there and didn't have time to obviously come back and get it. But the moment Mike showed up, it's under a whole bunch of water, so I don't know if it's just like that area just floods and now the vehicle's underwater. I don't know if that's what that's supposed to imply, or is it just being like, hey, that's how Gil got the truck. He found the truck that had it and ended up putting it at the bottom of the water. Or maybe it's because he was going to that place to find the treasure and knew exactly where it was, and that's why he had the truck to try and, like, I don't know if that's what that was. Maybe that's just me being stupid. I'm kind of confused about that bit, because it's just like, but obviously it's like the truck's under all that water, right? Or at least like that's potentially where all the gold is, but it's like there's no way it actually is. There's just so many moving pieces, and we just don't know where the fully like start is. Like obviously, there's just so many starting off points in some regards, and it's just that age-old question of who knew what when type of situation, and especially when it comes to Deli and Sonny. There was also the couple who runs the motel. Was it Benny or Benjamin and his wife? She kind of overheard some of the stuff going on between Deli and Mike. So you're like, okay, so that's another wrinkle in it. Especially because Benny's like, yeah, let's just do what we got to do. He's a paying customer. His business doesn't have to be our business. But she's like, yeah, but how much longer until Mike's trouble finds its way to us? And it's like, so they're going to be another wrinkle in the story. They were just kind of thrown in there. Which I was like, that actress, I've seen her fairly recently in something, but I can't remember what it was. Not unless I'm confusing her, because she is. Because I know there's an actress recently. I was like referencing this actress because I was like, is this the actress from Lost in Space, Teen Wolf? I'd also completely forgot she was also in Roswell, New Mexico. More recently, in like the last season. She's in the third and last season. But I was like, there was something super recently that I was like, oh, isn't that her? And I can't remember off the top of my head what it was that I was watching, which I recognized her in. But either way, like I said, just kind of a small thread we got introduced to in this episode. But I feel like because you're kind of super close to Mike in proximity, not necessarily in like familiarity, but just because of proximity, you're going to end up neck deep in all of this. We also had the Andy of it all. I almost let that slip my mind. I love when he came to like confront Mike, and then like Deli walked up and Andy's like, oh, because he was like, this is where I've done. But Mike's like, oh, remember where you left off, because I love to hear where the rest of that story was going. I was like, oh, you're such a dick, Mike. And so Andy wants to go back, have some of like the luminol stuff, for black light and looking for DNA and samples and stuff like, and fluids and stuff. But it's like the receptionist lady ended up using all of it because she thought it was computer dust cleaner or whatever. And it's like, you want me to get some more? He's like, no, how about we just let us not be able to stop, because he's just like, this town is on the brink of just falling apart, so why don't we just let every criminal do whatever they want to? It's just like, he just feels like it's just every time he turns around there's just something that just makes his job harder. It's just like, oh, you poor bastard, so he's definitely got his own role in all of this. How this all connects, like things are so, Mike and Deli and all that is at the center of all of this, and then we have these like, they're not necessarily disjointed stories, but they're these stories that are they are connected in a way, but you just don't know how it all is going to flow together. Still got like 5 more episodes for it to kind of like start filling in. It probably won't be till near the end of the season where we're like, okay, have a much better picture of how it all fully comes together. So I'm excited to see where the next episode ultimately ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good